All right, here we go. What's up?
Oh, there we go. All right.
Hey, what's up?
Good to see you guys. Good to meet Joseph. How are you doing there? All right.
Doing all right. Yeah. Great
Beautiful.
to meet you guys here in video conferencing, and we've got myself and Paul. I took a quick look at some of the materials you guys sent over. Sounds like you guys are doing like super cool stuff. The concept of your game looks ridiculous. Like it looks really fun, but I thought maybe we could first start by, could you guys just sort of introduce yourselves and then talk about sort of the company and then the game, and maybe we could also just talk about like the key problems or the key issues that you guys are dealing with that we could potentially help out on.
For sure. So starters, I'm Tuomas, the CEO and founder of Action.Reaction games. And so basically, I'm sure you guys know what's the roles of CEO. So I'm actually dealing with everything from finances to raising our seed round, and obviously a little bit of game design as well. And here I have our producer and programmer, Joseph.
Yeah, so I'm doing the production here. I also do a bit of code, a bit of art, and general design, stuff like that, and keeping everything rolling here at Action.Reaction Games.
And so a couple words about Action.Reaction games. So we're a casually massive multiplayer game and tech company exclusively focusing on the multiplayer markets. And along the way, we're building a technology that allows small independent teams to develop large-scale multiplayer games. So we are only a team of 4 guys here. And the product, so the casually massive games have 4 essential characteristics that we want to live by. They're made for the touchscreen generation. They're designed multiplayer as the core element, and the social gameplay is always considered as part of the core gameplay mechanics. And in our games, there is this intuitive feeling of progression, competition, and team play.
Yeah. And can you sort of show us a little bit in terms of like the gameplay? If you wanted to like share screen, you can just go to the bottom middle where it says share.
All right, so I'm going to give you guys a little walkthrough of the Splash Battle game mode. So it's 3 versus 3. Your first objective is to grab a goo brush that is near your spawn. Here you can see me grabbing the brush, and now I can actually use a goo as my advantage to move faster. And here the next objective is to paint the middle area. As you can see, the enemy is trying to do that as well. And the first team to paint the whole middle area gets a potion, and that potion gives you a super strength and gives you double the damage, double the HP, and now you can actually deal damage to the enemy core, and that is the win condition of this game mode. So here you can see me approaching the core, hammering it down, and while your team is helping you at the same time, your task is to destroy that core. You can use your goo as your advantage to move faster or make the enemies move slower, as they have done quite well here with the pink goo, as you can see. But that's it. That's the game mode in a nutshell. Very simple and challenging enough for those kind of like exciting back and forth gameplay when you just kind of like want to be just faster than your enemy team, grabbing the potion or painting some strategic spot from the map.
Okay, good. You guys did a good job on the bot part.
Yeah, the bots are quite good at this point. Maybe too good.
That's good.
Yeah.
Yeah, but
so basically we're building the whole core gameplay will be based around this goo mechanic that is being rendered in real time, and everything you do is based on the goo. So you can move faster in the goo, you can build walls and be really creative. So we're giving all the creativity for the players. And down the road, we already have like this interactive environment. So if you find a turret in the game map, you can tag the turret so it's on your side. Or if you find a dinosaur laying in the ground, you tag the dinosaur and it's playing on your side. You can hop on the dino and use it as your advantage.
Yeah.
So everything is taggable, and you can interact with the environment quite much.
Yeah, and that's just kind of, that's the game mode explanation. And then around like the actual real core of the game, we obviously have a roster of characters, and they all have unique abilities and roles. So this one, for example, has a boomerang and a rocket, and all of them vary from character to character.
Got it.
And you said you guys are only 4 people. So in terms of like the back end, and like, are you guys using? Just kind of curious in terms of like, you know, how does that 4 people within your team, how does that split out in terms of role and functionality? And then, you know, I assume you guys are using some, you know, like third-party backend or using additional art sources elsewhere to like be able to, you know, complete the project. Or
that's the beauty of it. Like, so we got a really top-notch CTO here, and we're using Unity as a backend, which gives us a much more, you know, freedom to kind of like, we don't need to worry about the backend team at all. So we're building our own framework on top of Unity. And I'm not sure if are you guys seeing my screen now? I guess
yeah, that's great.
Perfect. Yeah, you're doing great.
So unfortunately, I wasn't prepared that we're going to go so much on tech. So I would have obviously invited our CTO to the
No
call.
worries. Yeah, just kind of high level curious.
I can explain it. Yeah. So again, we built the whole thing on top of Unity, but we've written our own kind of netcode, our own simulation code, and all kind, like just basically like using Unity to its maximum capacity, but also keeping our stuff almost independent of it in a sense. Like we still use some of Unity's like core components and stuff like that, but really trying to keep it all out of Unity while using it on top of Unity.
This slide kind of like sums it up quite well. So the better, the more the reaction framework is being developed, the shorter the development times becomes, and the quality and complexity gets better and better. So we're creating an exit value through the framework and obviously through our portfolio of games. And this also enables us to be very lean and keeping the team size quite minimal. And then actually, this is something we briefly touched with you, Joseph, in San Francisco, that our pipeline is very streamlined in terms of like putting existing IPs on top of any of our existing games. So we can basically prototype and test like hypothesis very rapidly. Like, let's say Minion IP works in a brawler game, so we can do that like very quickly and in an agile way.
Right.
Okay.
Cool. So what's the current sort of development stage? Are you guys, you know, are you guys close to soft launch, or have you guys soft launched?
Yes. So currently we are in a beta in beta launch in Finland, UK, and Canada, and we are running a 1-month beta test, and then we're working with a company called Superscale. I'm not sure if you heard of the guys.
Yeah, I know Mika, and actually I've done a video interview with them, which I'll be publishing soon. So yeah, I think those guys are good.
Yeah, love the guys from Superscale. They're doing a great job. So we're working with those guys, and actually this time for our company, like this is a very exciting time because we're closing our seed round as we speak. So we're getting the data from the beta launch, and then sharing the data with our seed investors. And our goal is to close around June, latest July. And we have already raised about 300,000 last year. So things are looking well, and still four guys only.
Yeah, no, I think it's amazing what you guys have been able to do with such a small team and such a small budget. And so, you know, it's, hats off to you guys. You guys have done a fantastic job. So that's great. You know, just sort of also curious, like, how did you guys come up with the idea for this particular approach? And it does seem that there's a lot of people, you know, in sort of like within the Finland community that have been thinking along the lines of like Brawl Stars quite a bit. But just wondering.
Sure. So in heart, the majority of our team, we're multiplayer gamers. So we love, you know, everything about playing together, playing with your friends. So we kind of like try for that barbecue kind of like element that you play together with your friends next to you and just share the fun of playing together. So we thought about, obviously Brawl Stars has been a huge reference for us.
Yep.
But we love everything about Splatoon. It's such a well-designed game, and they brought something new to the shooter genre with the ink spreading mechanic. So the player is not only focusing on killing the enemy, but actually doing tasks along the matches. So we kind of love that variety. So we were thinking that, fuck man, why don't we just bring that to the kind of like brawler genre that brings a lot of creativity to the player. So we kind of like want to go to a sweet spot where there is something very familiar, but then something quite new to the mobile markets.
Right. And then in terms of the current beta, could you speak in terms of what you're seeing with respect to early metrics, the amount of CC you guys have been pushing into the game, and what you think the key challenges are right now?
Definitely. So we're seeing like the D1 retention is close to 40 at the moment, which is pretty good for a product that the product is like 5 to 10% complete. It's such an early stage. So that's pretty neat. And we're only measuring like day one and day 3. And during next week, we're going to hear about this CPIs and other metrics. But the session length is also pretty good, close to 6 minutes. So that's pretty neat. So people love to play the game. And then we have a funny KPI of our own, which is that the players have covered about 45 football stadiums of Goo. So that's really fun. So
45.
Yeah.
What's the average match time? Is that 6 minutes? Is that like on average 2 matches or 3 matches?
The average match time is about 3 to 4 minutes. So they're getting about 2 to 3 in average.
Okay.
Then we have a couple of questions for you guys, like in terms of the game design itself, and then probably if we have time, a little bit touch about some questions regarding to the beta launch itself.
Yeah.
Okay.
So you want to go?
What's that?
Yeah. So I guess I'll start with like kind of the concerns that we have with the current game mode. So obviously like this Goo mechanic is introducing quite a new thing to mobile. I don't think very many people are doing this, like a spreading Goo mechanic like that. But then on top of that Goo mechanic, we're also introducing like picking up guns, destroying cores, which aren't like new features to the thing, but might actually like kind of put the Goo in a backseat maybe, So we're kind of thinking like how we can bring the Goo more into like the focus. And then we also have another kind of game mode demo prototype that we can show you to see if that's a good idea and see if we can work that into it.
Yeah. So basically, I'm sure you guys know Splatoon, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, sure, great. So there's the Turf War game mode. So we are iterating on that, basically like bringing the Turf War to mobile. So that's actually even more simple game mode what we have now going on. So the question is, would you guys recommend us to introduce a new game mode to this beta launch, or should we keep improving the game mode we have now?
Yeah, I mean, it's always like a tricky question in terms of how, especially for a team as small as yours with just 4 people. Like, where do you spend your resources and how you think about allocating your time?
Exactly.
And so from that perspective, generally like just high level exercise that you could typically do is to try and understand with all the different types of features, whether it's a game mode, it's a new sort of monetization system, or any specific feature, would be to use some kind of either like expected outcomes or ICE/RICE type of framework, meaning like, you try and characterize what is a feature, what is the cost, and then what do you expect in terms of what the impact of the game is going to be. And so whether that's like an ARPDAU impact or a retention impact, and then to try and translate that into the ultimate, like, what do we think the overall LTV impact is going to be. And so what I would generally recommend is, so you're in soft launch. One of the tricky things about, especially given the situation that you guys are in, again, small team, limited resources, is, really trying to understand what are the most important things that you have to work on to make yourself successful. And so generally I like, from a soft launch perspective, having, what's called sort of a North Star model. So meaning that, when you think about fundamentally, what is it that you guys need to do to make sure that you guys have a high enough sort of LTV so that you guys can be like ROI positive against your user acquisition and marketing, is like, just trying to break down what to work on. And by North Star metric, meaning the one metric that you guys work on, that you guys focus on, because again, you guys are so small and with such limited resources. And so, generally speaking, that typically typically starts off with let's say D1, because without a good D1, you're kind of hosed. And so it sounds like you guys are in a good spot with a 40% D1, and especially if that's your D1 metric, that's worldwide blended against multiple sort of geographic tiers, and that's great. Then it's like, then what's next? Now, so is the next thing that we're worried about, is it D7 retention? And then is it like your ARPDAU or monetization, right? And then it's like just working with Superscale, maybe what you need is, as you're starting to plot your ARPU curve, is trying to understand what your monetization looked like in soft launch. And then it's going to be more about what is your, for example, D14 ROAS or D30 ROAS yield targets, for example, right? And so like, but just to have, a few key metrics that you're working against, and then to just focus on that one. And so going back to your question, should we be working on a game mode? Well, I guess the question is, what is the objective in terms of like, first of all, high level, what are we trying to do right now, right? And so if that target, for example, is you need your D7 retention up, then that might be a key thing to work on. Or it could be like, let's say you need to work on monetization and early midterm retention. Then it could be some kind of let's say what's popular in this type of action-based genre right now is some form of battle pass system, because it really reinforces sort of like quest progression, and it'll have a pretty strong impact in terms of your early mid retention. So I think that would be the way that I would approach it, is thinking through, okay, what are our goals? And so let's say we're good with D1. The question for this type of game I would probably suspect is naturally like D7 retention. And so is that good enough? And if not, then what is it going to take to get the D7 to, let's say, 20%, or, whatever our target is. And then from there, think about, okay, what are all of the specific features, whether it's a gameplay mode or a battle pass mechanic, or, it could be various retention types of mechanics. So on the home screen, it could be like a daily quest progression. It could be, different things that you put in terms of home screen retention. So those would be like, once you like then say this is our target, here are all the different features that can address that target. And then to look at each of those features and say, what is the cost, what is the risk, and then to prioritize and work on that sort of serially.
When I was working with a game that felt similar to this, I had the ability to make many different game modes. I had like a mini game section where I could do all kinds of stuff, and I wanted to do many different things. One of the things that I was forced to do, because I understand where Joseph's coming from, and I wasn't even to the point where Joseph wanted what we're talking about yet. So if I had the metrics and I knew because basically what we wanted was everything. Everyone wanted everything, right? Yeah. We wanted high day one. Like, what's your key metric? Everything now, right? That's what I was up against. So when I had that pressing down on me, I still was pretty adamant about what I wanted, regardless of regardless of what the company was wanted to see. Like, for example, I believe in most of the time that a game designer should make his mind up as fast as possible and change his mind as slowly as possible, because people change their minds so fast that it's just ridiculous. And free to play is so overwhelming that we want it to be successful, but we also want it to be the vision that we had. And you know, somebody has to own that vision, and if nobody owns that vision, then nobody owns that vision. So sometimes I would not even allow myself to change my own game. Like once I had the idea and it was on paper, I'd be like, you know, that's it. That's just how it's going to be. We're going to do this now. I'm a slave to this now. Like that's it, and we're going to do this, and it's going to suck. And hard work sucks, and that's why it's going to be good, because it's worth doing, because it's hard, and we're not going to back out, right? So I've had those moments, but this is what eventually happened. I made a screen where I put locks and chains on all the shit I couldn't finish, man. And then it's like coming soon, coming soon, coming soon. I tried to see how I can release these things in content, and I ended up having to focus on the one core area, which was gameplay. I had engineers taking vacations in the most important part. There's performance problems. We were giving demos, and it was like glitching out, and all we needed was this game to be functional and working in the core mechanics. And you know, it sounds like you guys are pulled between two mechanics, right? There's like this paint mechanic, and there's other mechanic layered with it. And you know, you want it to be different, or you want to focus on one.
Yeah.
You know, if you don't make the decision now, the decision is going to be made for you eventually. So, like down the line, 6 months from now, if this whole thing's broken, you guys are going to go, you know what, let's just focus on the paint mechanic, right? So like, I don't know if I think I would really be gauging like my engineering future. Like I sit down with engineers often, and I say, hey, what are you doing? How's it going? I had 2 engineers having babies the same month. I was like, what are you guys doing on the weekend, man? I was like, come on, guys. And they were like, yeah, I'm having a baby this month. Hey, I'm having a baby this month. And I was like, gosh, I had 2 engineers down, all these things. So your small team, I'd talk to some of the people who are working on it. And if there are serious problems in the mechanics, you know, and we'd have to figure out like how much time is it going to take for us to really reach this? Because if not, we need to pivot, because we can't arrive with this thing broken and choppy and not working, because we want to go with these 2 mechanics. And if they can work, then damn it, let's do it. But if they can't work, we need to know right now, you know? And to Joseph's point, like on like knowing what you really need, if it's not everything now, then what are those things, right? Like, what are those things? Battle passes, you know, it's super hard to build. It's very hard to build. I mean, you need, to battle pass, you need to integrate most likely dancing, characters, emotes, maybe special emojis so you can give to another person. You'd have to introduce probably like 5 or 6 new features just to do that one right. And you know, so if your main mechanic was retention day one, and that was what you needed, then you know, battle pass isn't gonna really help you. And you know, bugs in the game will help you fix day one, right? Like saying, if you fix those, you'll be way better for day one. And the gameplay itself will help you really well with day one. And some small mechanics, right? Like if you do like loot chests, there's little things, but you know, it really comes down to, in my opinion, I think that I would have a talk with my team about like what we're doing, and I would look at our map as like humanly as possible. Like, is there vacations coming up? What's going on? How much time can we put on this? And then how much further do we think we have to go until we actually master our current vision? Because if we don't think we can do it, then we won't. We just won't. We just won't do it. We'll lock it behind another mode, and we'll make a cool menu out of it. A block and chain will swing from it, and it'll say new mode coming soon. And we'll put a countdown on that thing, just so we try to stick to it. You know what I'm saying? Like, we try to stick to that deadline. But that's just something I wanted to say on top of Joseph's metric focused design. That's kind of more of a like, this is a game designer's new challenge, right? New challenge. This is it. The game design is not all the way about, it's not, hey, I have a cool idea anymore. It's, how do I work with it within a company where everyone's going, you know, back and forth from work? Some people are sick. We have time deadline, money, and we need to get this thing out, or else we won't survive, right? So the new game design is just like, this is it, right? Welcome to it, you know. And so I think you guys should either not change it. I probably say not. I would probably say I'd be careful about changing it. Once you change it, I don't know how then you start opening up this big gate of change, and then you start welcoming change all the time, and now nobody thinks you know what you're doing, right? But a game designer can change his mind if it's right and if it's true, and it's just like, let's do it. Everyone's like, hell yeah. But it has to be hell yeah, because somebody said, let's make this game mode right now. It's the best. And if you say it's not, well, what happens is, I think within our teams, they're like, okay, we'll change it. And then you're like, fuck, I hope this works too, you know what I'm saying? Because then you still have the same problem. You're like, well, I hope this decision is now good.
Yeah, and one other way to think about what Paul is saying is that, so especially again for a team like yours that's so small and where every person is so precious, the other sort of way of thinking about sort of feature changes or gameplay mode changes is is in terms of doing development proxies. And what I mean by that is, instead of having to actually make that game mode, have your engineers code it, do all the art, and actually implement it, is there any way you can get insight in terms of some of those features or things that you might want to do in terms of the game without actually implementing it? So what does that mean? So it means that, is there anything quick and dirty, whether it's like, okay, well, let's just bring in, 10 of our players and let's just walk through a wireframe of the different gameplay modes that we can do and get some initial reactions that way. Because again, with such a limited team and time, you're for every single feature, for every single thing that you want to do, how do you feel good about making that decision without actually implementing it, right? And so fundamentally, sometimes it just comes down to, well, this dude's the lead game designer and that's his vision, so let's just go. Or to get data or whatever via focus groups or surveys or whatever you can, simple prototype, just so that you don't have to spend that full cost, would be the other kind of way to think about it.
Yeah, that's great.
A little kind of detailed question about game mechanic. Probably want to hear, Paul, your comments on this. I'm gonna quickly share my screen here.
Okay.
Here we go. So we're also iterating on quite quirky game mechanic, which is like you would actually paint in real time using your finger, which is pretty damn cool. But then, we have faced the problem that you would have your finger on the screen. But still, I just want to show you guys and hear you guys out. So let's hope the video is clear here. Oh, do you see the video?
I'm not seeing a video right now. I'm just seeing the slide.
Yeah. There we go. How about now?
Oh, there we go. Yep.
All right, beautiful. So here you can see you're actually spreading the goo with your finger in real time. It's pretty neat. And it gives you an advantage of, helping your teammate that is on the other side of the map. So you spread goo in front of him and he moves faster, or you spread the goo in front of enemy and he starts to move slower. So this is pretty neat mechanic. But we kind of like felt that it's quite too much, because then you have your finger on the screen all the time. So I want to hear you guys' thoughts about that. Maybe it could be capped, like it's a gun that you use for 3 seconds. You can actually quickly paint or cover some areas. So how do you guys think about that?
Sorry, could you explain that one again? Sorry, I didn't quite get it. Did you get it, Paul?
Yeah, I can speak to it a little bit. Let me take on this real quick, Joseph, and maybe you'll learn something as I go real quick. So the first time I played one of these games, it was called Minigore. I don't know if you guys heard of Minigore. And Minigore is so much fun. These like 2 joystick run around games. I was just talking to a team about this yesterday. I think sometimes our users are like they're best suited to be treated like kids, and that's why we have things in games called tutorials, and that's why the little kids have tutors, and everything in the tutorial you can find in the kids industry, where they teach children how to read from repetition, color coding, audio feedback, positive reinforcement. everything that we do in a children's education environment is the same kind of things we do in video game environments. So we often get a little bit confused about what video games are. Some people think they're trying to take advantage of kids, but really they're just techniques that we do to teach people, right? That's how people learn. Stars, good job, right? These things feel good. So when I imagine someone riding a bus and there's a glare on their phone, and there's like notifications coming, like this is like the kid in class who cannot sit still, right? He's like, hey, what's up? Throwing spitballs or whatever. He's trying to teach this guy. That's kind of what our users are like often, right? They can't focus. They're getting notifications. Their friends saying hi. There's a glare. They're doing it while someone's in the car or something like that. So, in the name of simplicity, I think that it's hard. I think that this other feature is super hard. But it is okay for probably the sit down. I'm really focused on this game. I'm going to kick some ass and I'll figure it out, right? Because people are playing Fortnite like crazy, and that game is so hard on the touchscreen, right? So, but people are willing to push themselves through that learning curve pretty big. So with this particular mechanic, I would probably say that I may try to find another way. Just because you're even asking about it is a bad sign. Maybe paint can just dump by you pressing a button wherever you walk, it starts painting. These types of controller games are very hard to do well, and then what happens is you end up just scooting backwards most of the time and then aiming if somebody's coming at you or something like that. So the strategy in these games feels like you're always just kind of moving and pivoting, and if there's this whole other element, then you probably just move backwards, pivot, and color or something like that. People will figure out some strange rhythm and you'll just be like, what's going on, right? Because they'll just go like this. They'll just move backwards and both guys will do the same thing or something like that. But I don't know. I think it could be worth changing just because you're going to have one hell of a tutorial. And I guess it really just depends. I'd have to really try it because some games are hard. Some games are hard to use, but it depends.
But it's rather confirmation to our thoughts, and we don't have this mechanic in our game at the moment, but we tested it back and we got really good feedback, especially from the investors. They saw novelty in it, but then we went, investors they might not be the best game designers ever.
Oh
so
yeah,
we went back and tested the mechanic, and yeah, it's pretty cool, but then we came to the conclusion that, hey, this doesn't work. But I just wanted to kind of have confirmation from experienced guys like you. So thank you for
totally. Yeah. Watch out for that. Watch out. You might have some kid playing Fortnite on mobile, and you think, hey, anything's possible, and then you put something in your game, and it's just like, oh, great, But I can see how investors would love that. Oh yeah, love that between lunch and dinner, right? It's nice. He's like, let's go.
Yeah. I just want to step back a bit to the few concerns we have with the game mode. So again, we want the focus to be on this goose spreading mechanic, but we have all of these other things, again, like picking up potions, becoming a giant, destroying the core and all of that stuff. And then we also have been watching the replays of our players in the game. So we've actually seen, sometimes people really don't pick up the goo gun at all, or they don't know to grab the potion, or they get confused by that. So we're just thinking here, and we were just talking about, it's kind of risky to make changes, dramatic changes to the game mode. But I'm wondering, if to actually really get the focus on goo, it would be a good idea to really just get the goo as the main focus of the game mode and go into that Splatoon kind of turf war game mode where your only objective is to fill the entire map with your team's goo, as opposed to having all of these other destroy core, pick up potion, pick up goo gun kind of thing. It was literally just break the goo mechanic down to its most simple form.
Yeah, I mean, I think that, and apologies, we haven't played the game, so it's hard to kind of comment on some of these issues without actually experiencing and playing it. But if you have the resources, the typical approach to this would be, if you've already implemented both modes, is to kind of launch both and see what the relative KPIs and metrics are. So some form of A/B testing, or ideally a more of a multi-arm bandit approach would be better. But you could simply sort of A/B test those features. But again, if we're talking about a small team with limited resources, and fundamentally the cost to execute this is very high, and especially for these game modes where you're trying to test with a game that requires high CCU, and so you've got to push like a shit ton of users to both modes or to 3 modes or to whatever to like really figure out. And to get stat sig against that is going to be pretty expensive. And so fundamentally, just speaking more philosophically, that sometimes in these situations with limited teams, limited resource, then thinking about whether it's some form of development proxy or just, you know, it can sometimes come down to like, you know, who owns the vision for this game. And so maybe if it's you, Tuomas, and you're the CEO, and you're like, okay, you know what? Fundamentally, we're just going to have to make a call. So like, fuck it. We're going with like, you know, plan B. And then, but I mean, it sounds like at least from a gameplay perspective that, you know, maybe some of these minor issues, whether it's like the specific in-game objective or whatever, that that may not be the thing that kills you. It may or may not be. It may be something else. And so then trying to think about, you know, if you guys, if it is like, if you guys can run an A/B test, great, do that. You know, that'll be the most definitive way of trying to figure this out. If it is going to be too expensive, too time, you know, and you know, again, companies like yours only have a limited number of, you know, you only have a limited amount of runway and bandwidth, and so like, then it's like, you know, how do you prioritize that limited amount of time that you guys have? And so then developing, whether it's an expected outcomes or ICE rights framework or something like that to help prioritize and focus your team is important. And then to understand, okay, well, if it is, let's say it's D7 retention is your primary focus right now, then, you know, aligning everything to be around what's going to move that and forgetting about everything else, right? So whether it's like the gameplay mode or whatever, then it's just like, okay, well, you know what, fuck it. What we have right now is good enough. These are the other things that can impact D7, whether it's like, you know, whether it's a bug or a feature or a retention mechanic, whatever it is, then that's how I would be thinking about that. But having said that, you know, maybe if you guys are open to a follow-up call, then, you know, Paul and I can actually play the build. And if there's specific gameplay sorts of questions or issues, we can certainly weigh in on those. You know, I could even potentially bring in some of my friends who are, you know, very gameplay focused, who could, you know, potentially comment on some of that stuff. But that would be sort of the high level thinking from my side.
Right. Yeah, we can totally shoot up the test flights on your way like 2 days.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah. I don't think a game that's not. I don't think a confusing games is the biggest problem in the world most of the time. Just to be honest, but that was kind of. I don't want to say that too aggressively for you to take that, because it could be the wrong answer, but it also sometimes doesn't matter. You know, I've worked on some games where people say this game's ugly, it's confusing, and I say, well, that's who the fuck we are, so we're going to be that way now. You know what I'm saying? Okay, and then we turned out to be, you know, pretty big deal on that particular product. You know, and I was just at a like an arcade bar, and there's this game called like Killer Queen or something like that. I don't know what it's called. It's called Killer Queen, and it's like 4-on-4, and everyone's got to do something, and I have no idea what's going on, none, right? And nobody else does either. And everyone's like, I love this game. Everyone's like, ah, right? Dude, joysticks and buttons, and everyone's having their drinks, and the game's huge. People are doing these big competitions on it now. No tutorial, nothing. And I know that has a social element to it where people can talk and stuff, but sometimes being a confusing game could be a strength if you just, it's really hard to fix some things. It really is. It depends on the game though. You might be saying, hey guys, get this bucket or get this thing now, get it. And in some ways, you know, you might not need to do that to a community who's like, the guy's like, I know I'm gonna get this bucket because last time I got it, I kicked some ass, right? So you know, the user base could become a little bit more hardcore in that sense, to where the things that you're not able to highlight could actually become like a part of it, you know? So you can own your flaws, and that could actually be a good thing. So that is an option, I believe, in game design. I do believe that's an option. It's not a common option. But if you're making a crazy fighter, imagine some like Chinese freaking fighter game and nobody knows how it works, it can take off. You know what I'm saying? It's just like, what the heck's going on, right? It's possible, but you know, but this game's a little bit more casual. I've worked on some pretty heavy notifications that say big text like "do this now," and these things help. But those were more for like events where I wanted people to go spend So I don't know. It really just depends. I think I should play the game. But I just wanted to throw that opinion out, that sometimes a game that is confusing wins. And that's really against the norm, right? People think we have to be very clear and make this great tutorial. Everyone's going to understand it. And here comes some game, and it's like, what is this, right? I have no idea how this works. You're afraid to look at it. It's like too boring.
The one other way to kind of think about this game in terms of like a simple framework that I like to use is just one, in terms of like the high level, in terms of like the fiction, the genre, the high level concept, how strong that is. And so I think what you guys have done is very interesting from the perspective of, Brawl Stars plus Splatoon. But having said that, we also have to understand that right now in the market today, there are a lot of companies, especially, from your part of the world, where teams have been thinking about Brawl Stars. And so, whether it's Space Ape with their game, and there's a lot of folks kind of coming in with a Brawl Stars type of mechanic. So then thinking about from a marketing perspective, whether the sort of Brawl Stars plus Splatoon angle is that strong enough, and how you would be crafting your marketing message to try and attract players against a backdrop where there might be a lot of competition. That's one. The second piece is just thinking in terms of the gameplay, which seems like you guys are thinking a lot about with respect to different game modes, different sort of in-game objectives and things like that, and how to optimize that. So, whether we optimize that through an A/B test, or whether we optimize that and kind of improve upon that, just given the cost of testing the different types of gameplay for your kind of game that requires such high CCU, would be, how to determine which gameplay mode to pick and the specific optimizations from a gameplay perspective. And the third part, which we haven't talked a lot about, would be like the systems design, or the way that we monetize against the game. And so, we talked a little bit about Battle Pass, but it would be good to get more information with respect to, are you monetizing against, cosmetics, Battle Pass fashion, for these type of games, and especially with like the Fortnite audience, they don't like to monetize, against sort of like more of a pay to win. But is it just cosmetics? Are you going to do more of the Clash Royale model, where you are able to sort of have different tiers and trophies, and you're actually able to monetize against power in the game, or and just the general sort of monetization design or philosophy that you guys are thinking about? So maybe you guys could talk a little bit more about that third piece.
Yeah, sure. So again, it's kind of following the Brawl Stars formula there, where the characters are the highest value item there. But again, totally going against that pay to win kind of thing, because again, that's a huge problem, I think, in gaming personally, and I think a lot of players think that as well. And of course, cosmetics down the road will be a huge aspect of the monetization. But other than that, it's really about kind of the gotcha mechanics, the characters, and them showing the most value of everything around.
Exactly. And then one thing, I'm just going to share my screen again here. Quick intro to what we're thinking a little bit further here is to, so we're actually thinking of introducing, like we briefly touched it, that we would actually be picking up different guns and different objects from the battlefields. So basically that would be a content play. So with new characters, we could introduce bi-monthly new content that you could actually find from the in-game. So bringing this mystery from battle royale games to this kind of brawler genre as well. We got really good feedback for this, and we're definitely trying to pull that off. So obviously want to hear your thoughts on that as well.
Yeah, I mean, it looks super cool. I kind of want to, for me personally, I know if Paul can weigh in, but I personally would refrain from giving too much feedback on the game before playing it. But I mean, it definitely sounds like a pretty cool idea, and certainly the amount of variety and kind of surprise and new things that you produce is a pretty cool concept overall. The one other thing I would just caution is, Supercell has a sort of a built-in advantage with respect, just because they've built such a great brand name. When they soft launch something, everybody tries it out and they get so many players. And then also just in terms of the amount of, so there's a lot of public data with respect to how much marketing companies do with respect to the revenue that they get. And so there's this typical metric around the percent of marketing relative to your bookings or your revenue. And for a lot of companies, public companies like Glue or Zynga, that's generally in like the 30% range. Whereas with a Supercell, because they're so well known and because they are who they are and they've built this great reputation, I would suspect that's closer to 8%. And why do I talk about this? The reason why I talk about this is like from a monetization perspective, you actually as an independent developer without the brand name, without like or without IP, are going to be facing, basically an uneven battle where structurally, the amount of economics that you have to overcome is actually higher than Supercell. So you have to not only match Brawl Stars, you got to be better than them, right? From a monetization design, from like almost every, and it's not fair to some. Well, nothing in life is fair, but that's just the situation that you're going to be faced with. And so when we have seen Supercell kind of struggle, right, where they had Brawl Stars out in soft for such a long time, trying to improve the game, trying to get it to be where it is. Certainly there are challenges which I and Paul probably haven't been studying closely enough, but we'll play and we'll study this and try to help you guys. But I guess my point is that the tricky part is going to be whether it's the monetization design or whatever, that there is going to be a little bit of a higher barrier. So like for us to just like match Supercell is probably not going to be good enough.
Right. Yeah, and we're definitely, of course, thinking about the battle pass and on all of like the newer things that some of these games are introducing as well in terms of monetization.
And in terms of like circling back a little bit to our investors, like we have got like it's one of our strengths also to be this freaking ambitious as we are. So some of the investors are liking that exactly that. Fuck yeah, these guys are super ambitious. Like we want this high risk, high reward case. Like if this is gonna be successful, it's really gonna be successful. So we're also thriving on that, but obviously keeping our feet in the ground and understanding the realities of how expensive it is marketing these days and user acquisition, etc.
Yeah, and I think you guys have done a good thing with partnering with a company like Supercell. Like those guys are, from what I don't know them super well, but from what I've seen and heard, they're really killing it, and definitely. It seems like they're picking up so many companies in Finland, right? Like everyone, all the Finnish guys are like working with them. But anyway, and from I would say that like one of the really encouraging things about you guys is I just have to admit I'm super impressed with what you guys have done with such a small team on that budget. Like from my perspective, investors would be crazy not to just like continue to invest. Come on, like look at what you guys have done with like such a small team and small budget. It's ridiculous. So one, congratulations. I think you guys are awesome. And I think we will, Paul and I will try to help you guys out.
I definitely want to play the game. Yeah, I definitely want to check it out.
Yeah. So, but I do think that for us, I think we probably do have to play the game a lot more, and we'll also study that sort of Brawl Stars genre a little bit more, so that we can give you more specific feedback with respect to the gameplay. But kind of my recommendation in terms of like if you guys want to keep talking to us and potentially have us help out a little bit more is a couple of things. One, so Paul and I will check out the build, we'll play the game, we'll study the sort of we'll study Brawl Stars a bit to try and give you more focused and specific feedback around the gameplay. Two, I think it'd be great to like just sort of review what your plan is from a soft launch planning perspective in terms of like, how you guys have structured your soft launch with respect to, your features roadmap, how you're, are there like a bunch of different A/B tests or different things that you're working on, but like how you've structured this, your soft launch, and then how you are developing your development roadmap for this time. And one of the things that I found very often, like 90% plus of the time, is that most companies that jump into soft launch do it without a specific plan, so that it's usually fucked up, right? It's usually like, oh, hey, we're in soft launch. What are we doing? Oh, well, let's look at the metrics. Oh, okay. Oh, wait. Oh, this is fucked up. Well, then what do we do? Well, let's try and plan a feature. Oh, okay. Well, here's this feature. Now we got to get someone to design it. then we have to get all the art for it, then we have to integrate it, then we have to get like the telemetry, and like the data and stuff to try and measure it. And then it's like, fuck, dude, we're like 2 months in. Whereas, you know, if you plan it ahead of time, it's like, okay, boom, we're going to do this feature, then this feature, or this A/B test, and this A/B test. And, you know, we're going to be, you know, going against this North Star metric. And then here are all the different things that we can do against that. And all the stuff's already, all the telemetry in terms of the KPIs and things you're going to measure are already in. Then you save so much time in soft launch. And so, like, you know, it'd be great in terms of the second objective, in terms of understanding, you know, how you guys have thought about your soft launch, how you guys have, you know, whether it's like the different tests or the different features, and sort of just kind of reviewing that. And then third, I think that it's probably worth thinking about from the perspective of like the high level concept, whether, you know, the approach you guys are taking is the right approach. And I normally wouldn't like want to focus too much time on this aspect, just because, you know, just as a player, or, you know, just as someone looking at the concept, it seems like it's so strong and so good already. But I kind of worry, you know, Space Ape has their kind of Brawl Stars type 3D sort of game, and then there's a bunch of other companies coming in that I would worry a little bit about. Just let's just kind of make sure we optimize the marketing message in like the specific way that you're kind of you know, presenting that high level concept. So I would put a little bit of thought into that. And then fourthly is the you know, the underlying problem behind all of these kind of multiplayer PvP games, which is around CCU match, around, you know, can we build a model for how many players that it's going to take? And so for you guys, you know, I mean, you guys really need to align with Superscale very closely, because, you know, if they're managing your user acquisition, like they have to understand what you guys actually need to make sure that you guys are testing the things you guys need to test, right? And so whether it's from, okay, well, we're going to be testing these 2-3 different gameplay modes, and so we need stat sig and we need a certain amount of CCU that's X or Y, right? To be able to, you know, work with Superscale and tell them, okay, this is what we need in order to test this properly, instead of being like, I don't know, maybe let's just try to bring in, you know, 20,000 players, or let's try and hit like 1,000 or 2,000 DAU or whatever it is. Like, and again, for these type of high CCU games, and depending on how you've implemented your matchmaking and all that, and how much CCU you need to like get your match times down, and then whether you guys have bots or not, like this is actually a big, hairy kind of issue and problem that underlies all of these sort of PvP match-based games. And so to characterize that a little bit more formally, so that, you know, again, we want to be as efficient as possible, especially for a team like yours that's so small with limited budget, limited time, going up against some of these giants. We want to be as smart as possible. And so that would be the other area that I think we can try and put a little bit of more formalized thinking.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
And then let me also know, Joseph, if you guys want to dive deep more to the proprietary framework we're building, because we've been talking about a lot of like scarce resources, but actually like talking about game modes, we can actually bump a new game mode in one day. It's so streamlined and automated that even Joseph,
I built like the turf war game mode in a matter of like 2 hours, and then it takes, you know, an extra 2 hours or 3 hours to get everything, like all the little nuances and stuff that we need.
And only about 150 lines of code.
Yeah, everything's like pretty much kind of pre-built in a sense, but also like kind of not. You know, we have full flexibility while things are also kind of like already there, plug and play, basically.
Right.
Got it. Cool. Yeah, and if you guys are looking for funding, you know, I do, you know, I'd be happy to introduce you to a couple of folks as well that who I know on my side looking to invest in companies like yours. So
that would be lovely, man.
Okay.
In terms of well, what do you need to know? We can obviously continue after this.
So maybe like maybe we could wrap it up here, but then I'll send a follow-up email against those 4 different things, and then in terms of specific action items, if you can get Paul and I like a, you know, a test flight invitation or something like that, and then probably the other piece is like, if you have a game design doc around the monetization, or how you've planned your, whether it's your battle pass or how you plan your systems design, then maybe in our follow-up call we can also, so we can cover the gameplay, and then we can also dive a little bit more deeply into the systems design. then I'm hoping that I can, like, if you do have that systems design spec, I'm hoping I can get our buddy Jeff. Jeff, if you're listening to this, please jump on our next call. But I'm hoping that he can join us, that he can give you guys some very, like, you know, he's a systems design master. So like, if he can give you guys some feedback with respect to your specific meta systems design as well.
Great.
We'll put the Jeff Witt sign in the sky.
Perfect. It's perfect.
Okay, great. Well, in that case, I think that's it. Guys, thank you so much for your time and your interest in talking with us. You know, we love doing this stuff. And then, you know, also just congratulations on, you know, what you guys have been able to accomplish so far. I mean, you guys definitely have a lot to be proud of.
Thank you so much.
We appreciate that.
Beautiful.
Okay.
All right.
Great. Thanks.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah.